So there's a couple of things working really well with the writing here, which is part of the reason why this is so engaging and really pulls you in. And one of them is, we are talking about writing horror short films, and today we are taking a look at Into the Night. A man who flees from the scene of a fatal bicycle accident soon finds that he's being haunted by more than just his own guilt. The total runtime for this bad boy is 14 minutes, 39 seconds. We'll watch it through together, we'll break it down, and then we'll talk about some really smart things they did to really tell the story in this bad boy. Opening with a bang here. Very strong opening hook so far, like we hit the ground running. So this is clearly our protagonist here. Got it. We got a hit and run. Okay, so we are 2 minutes, 11 seconds in hit and run situation. A lot of conflict, right? The setup, we've got a guy hit a woman on a bike, drove off. This is clearly the inciting incident as well, right? We obviously have a problem. Somebody's dead on the side of the road. So now what is he gonna do? Does he have a goal? Does he have a plan? Is he gonna turn himself in? So this is gonna take us into our rising action already. Like this short is literally, boom, hitting the ground running. We love to see it. We love nice, efficient storytelling like this, right? Just give us what we want, man. Give us that conflict. Sound is really good.
Ben, is everything all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't feel well.
Well, what's wrong? Are you sick? It sounded like you were throwing up.
Yeah, but I'm fine. I just bit of nausea. I'll be down in a minute.
Okay. Well, I'll put your dinner in the fridge and you can heat it up if you start feeling better.
All right. Thanks, love.
He was a member of a cult known as
We're 4 minutes in. He got home, getting himself together, spoke to the wife. It's clear he's Hiding it? Got it. We've got some escalation here. It seems like his goal is to hide what he's done, right? He left the scene. He didn't tell wifey about it. So is his goal to carry on like nothing happened? Okay, so it seems clear what Ben's trying to do here.
Death, worship an interdimensional being, and perform sacrifices in an effort to transcend the plane of our current reality. So far-fetched. That's the police thought, until specific clues led to the burial place of missing woman, Donna Wilkes.
Great shot.
Wilkes, a student at Medford University, vanished from a hotel just outside of Leadville, Colorado in 1997.
Hello? Hello?
Is this the Medford Police Department? I want to report an accident.
All right, well, what sort of an accident?
There's a woman on a bicycle, and it was dark. I couldn't see her. It was just so dark, I just couldn't see anything. The lights, they must have scared her because she swerved in front of the car, and I hit her. I hit her, and she was just lying there, and she wasn't moving.
Okay, I understand, sir. I'm gonna have to ask you to calm down, though. Okay? Now, how is she? Is she breathing?
I don't know. I left. I just panicked, and I drove away, and I don't know why.
Oh.
Hello?
Did anyone else see the accident?
No, not that I can remember. It's just so dark, there wouldn't have been anyone there anyway.
Then why say anything at all?
What?
Well, you said it yourself. It was dark, and she swerved in front of you. Doesn't seem to me like there's anything you could have done.
No, you're not listening to me. I hit her and I left. I should have stayed. I could have helped her.
But you didn't.
She shouldn't have been there. What was she thinking driving so close to dark?
I'd be asking myself the same thing.
I should have helped her.
Well, it's a bit late for that, isn't it? If I were you, I don't think I'd mention anything at all.
Who is this?
Here in the quiet community of Medford, as
So that was a very, very odd conversation with the operator there. Some interesting things we've done with the blocking here as well. At the top of the conversation, we're here when he's clearly professing his sort of guilt, right? We can see he's dealing with guilt here. And then we clearly articulate the shift in the conversation with the blocking. So he's facing us here. And then when things shift, the tone shifts and the conversation goes a different direction, and it goes in that weird direction, we articulate that with the blocking.
No, not that I can remember. It's just so dark, there wouldn't have been anyone there anyway.
Then why say anything at all?
So when the thoughts get dark, almost justifying it, we're seeing shade on his face here now. That's very interesting. When things get a little twisted and dark, he's now in shadow. So we've got some escalation. He's tried to turn himself in, right? So he's taking action here. This is dramatic action. He tried to turn himself in, I guess.
authorities are investigating a horrible hit-and-run that occurred earlier this evening. The accident happened on Robertson Road, several miles outside of the Ellison Creek area, where a woman was left to die in the street. Please be warned that the images you are about to see may shock and disturb you. Local police estimate that the accident happened sometime between 7:30 and 7:45 p.m. However, it wasn't until approximately 8 p.m. that another motorist happened upon the accident and contacted emergency services. Unfortunately, the cyclist succumbed to her injuries shortly after paramedics arrived at the scene. The victim's name has not yet been released, as the woman's family has yet to be notified. But it would have been pretty dark at the time. I hesitate to think anyone would have even been able to see what happened to that poor woman. And One has to wonder what she was doing out so close to dark. I suppose it'd be hard to blame anyone for what happened. Harder still to expect someone to come forward and admit to it after the fact. I mean, where's the sense in that? Police are asking anyone with any information on this accident to please come forward in an effort to help identify the driver of the vehicle that struck the cyclist.
We have a very, very clear sense of escalation. We had that weird phone call. Now the news anchor and the TV's talking to him. Very surreal. But things are pretty much going like this. Safe to say, maybe this isn't real? Is this in his head? The police are at his door. Okay, that's not good. Nice shot.
Good evening, sir.
Can I help you?
Are you Benjamin Woodard?
Yes. Something the matter?
I'm sorry to bother you so late, but there was an accident down the road a few miles from you. A young woman on a bicycle was hit by a passing vehicle, and she died at the scene.
I'm sorry to hear that.
There's no easy way to say this, Mr. Woodard, but that young woman was your wife. I'm so sorry. By the time the paramedics arrived, there was nothing they could do. They tried everything to help her. She passed away soon after that. No one saw the driver, not the woman. But I'm telling you right now, Mr. Woodard, that we will do everything that we can to find him. If he wants to stay with you, if you need anything, sir, I was saying we could stay with you. Someone, if you need it.
No, that's fine, thank you.
I am so sorry for your loss. The medical examiner may call you in the morning for you to come down and see her, if you'd like.
Thank you.
I'm thinking, is he gonna get caught? What's going on? Do they know it's him? Then it turns out it was his wife. You. Okay, clear escalation. Got it. Convo with this cop still odd that the officer never said what department he was. Just that whole exchange seemed a little odd. Cop seemed a little too emotional. We are 11 minutes in, just 14 minutes long. So we gotta be coming up on that climax. This next scene's probably the climax, okay? So his goal here, he's dealing with grief. He's trying to turn himself in. What's gonna happen here? Oh, that's right. So he spoke to wifey when he first got home in the bathroom. That's right. Now she's in the kitchen. Okay. She's clearly not alive. Great sound design. Oh.
Who was that?
Nobody. Just the neighbors.
What did they want?
You know, I can't remember.
Well, maybe it'll come back to you.
Went to the market to pick up a few things. Be back soon. Hearts. Aw. Look at that face.
How was your ride?
It was fine. Just fine.
That's good.
Are you feeling all right? You don't look so well.
I'm fine. Just fine.
Very nice. Mr. Chris understood the assignment. And she keeps cutting that apple, right? Like she's been hacking away at this apple, and then at the very end, it's like she's freshly cutting it again. Everything we're seeing from Mr. Ben here, we're seeing a mental projection of like his internal thoughts, right? This is all in his head. The conversation with the operator, the news anchor, the cop at the door, seeing his wife. This is all a mental projection of what Ben is thinking or struggling with. That's very, very powerful. In particular with this last scene, there's just some small details that really tie all this together and make it really resonant. He's like dealing with guilt here, but he's also dealing with denial, or at least wanting her to be alive. And we see this echoed visually, like her eyes. So her eyes are alive here because they're brown, they look lively. Now her eyes are dead. Her eyes are cold here. Cold and dead. In this moment, he's dealing with the guilt of it. And then in a split of a second, she blinks.
Fine.
Now he's dealing with denial. So this is denial. It's like when the eyes are cold and dead, it's the guilt. She's dead. I killed my wife. And then when her eyes are lively, it's denial. He wants to remember her as being alive. He wants to remember her how she was before, and he wants to act like it never happened, essentially. And we see that echoed in the performance as well. He's kind of carrying on like she's still alive here. Very, very powerful scene. Very powerful stuff. Sounds like she hacked an arm off with that last cut, and then the cuts after that are just more like what you would expect from an apple cut. So there's a lot of little subtle nods here. Very clever. Another nice little detail here is when he opens the door, it sounds like the gallows are opening, right? With the sound design, and it's another little nod or a wink at the fact that he feels guilty. Listen to the sound of the door as it opens on that initial open.
Good evening, sir.
This is a very nice little touch moment there. Now that we know for sure that all of this was in his head, then all of these earlier scenes take on such a deeper context, right? Like we're literally seeing his struggle, the externalization of his struggle. When the anchor is talking to Ben, we get this moment where it's like we're pushing into Ben's head, right? It makes it very clear
Anyone would have
that
even
this was
been
all
able
in
to
his
see
head.
what happened to that poor
Like he's
woman.
talking to himself.
And
Like here.
one has to wonder what she was doing out so close to dark.
It's a very
I
good
suppose
choice
it'd
on
be
film
hard
grammar
to
here.
blame anyone for what happened. Harder still
It's like
to
we're pushing
expect someone
right
to come
into his
forward
head.
and admit to it after the fact.
And the expression on his face, like these are all his thoughts.
Where's the sense in that? Police are asking anyone with any information.
Yeah, like we're so close on him, right? And that's the intent. It's like these are all his thoughts that we're hearing. So the anchor is just his thoughts, right? Very well executed. Just to put a bow tie on the story structure bit here, because I forgot to finish that up. The climax, clearly the scene with wifey here, right? This is obviously the climax. Emotions are at their high, the poop hits the fan, okay? And the resolution, just a few seconds long. It's just his reaction. So there's a couple of things working really well with the writing here, which is part of the reason why this is so engaging and really pulls you in. And one of them is they've taken all the internal conflict going on with Ben, they've made it external, something we can see, something we can point to camera at, okay? And this is filmmaking 101. This is visual storytelling 101. All of that internal heady psychological turmoil he's going through, they just turned it into a scene, something we can dramatize, right? With the anchor, with the cop, the operator, etc. And the second thing they've done really, really well is they've given us a great character. At the end of the day, all a story is characters solving problems. Stories are about watching characters or watching people do interesting things to solve problems, okay? And this is the same for horror short films. It's the same thing, fundamentals, characters solving problems. So what makes Ben an interesting character are the things that he does to attempt to solve his problems, right? What he does to try and solve his problems are unique to him. They're interesting to watch. Interesting to watch, right? He's done a hit and run. He's killed his wife. Those are some massive problems. But what he does to attempt to deal with those problems, to deal with the guilt that comes up, to try and hide it, to deal with the pain, what he does is equally interesting and unique to him. And what you also need for an interesting character is they need to be active. With most good stories, you'll find the protagonist, they're active characters. Active characters are interesting to watch because they do interesting things about their problems. They do something about their problems. Passive characters are quite the opposite. Passive characters are boring to watch. They're a snooze fest because they don't do anything about their problems. We don't tend to respect passive characters, but we tend to root for, respect, and empathize with active characters because they struggle. They actually try. And what makes Ben an interesting character to watch is he's very active. Even though everything that we're seeing go on with him is inside his head, he's doing some flippin' mental gymnastics in his head, right? Like the hoops he's jumping through in his head are astronomical. It's relatable. Like if you did a hit and run and killed your wife, like this is all very relatable, but it's also fascinating and interesting to watch. Mr. Ben here is practically drunk with delusion. Like he's really struggling to deal with the denial, the guilt, the lengths that he's going through to grapple with these emotions are extraordinary. And it's interesting to watch. It's fascinating to watch. And that's what makes us root for him and empathize with him because we can see the efforts that he goes to as an audience. And it allows us to feel for him. We can empathize with him because we can see the struggle. It makes it so much more heartbreaking with the scene with the denial with his wife and grappling with the fact that she's actually dead in the denial. Because he's an active character and we can see the struggles he's going through, the lengths he's going to deal with this, it makes all of this so much more nightmarish and so much more heartbreaking. Horror films are just like any other story. You still gotta have great characters. We still need to think about writing great characters. It can't just be about a concept. The real horror here comes from the humanity of the situation. Like I've never done a hit and run on somebody, much less my wife, right? But I can imagine how horrible that must be. I can imagine how crushing that guilt, those feelings must be. I can imagine all of those things, so it makes it relatable. I can relate to the humanity of that situation. Don't want to forget to mention the performances in here. Really, really good all around. Great casting on the cop. I love the timbre of his voice. You know, in this scene, I felt the cop was a little too emotional, and I think that was a dead tell. It's because it didn't really happen, right? The cop was way too emotional, like his heart was on his sleeve. It's not what you would expect from a police visit, but they were towing that line between imagination, fantasy, right? This is all in Ben's head, and reality. And I think the choices they made in the acting and the performance here worked really, really well. And him, dude, brother, you just killed it all day, every day, twice. On a Sunday, you just destroyed it. This looks simple. It looks simple watching, but what he's done here, what they've done in terms of the acting and the directing, both together, is actually very difficult to do. Like he toes the line very closely. Like this could have easily turned into something super melodramatic. This could have easily turned into that. But they've done a great job of doing less is more. Holding the cards close to the chest, less is more. And that's very difficult to do. It's not as easy as it sounds. And they've done a great job of allowing the audience to project into Ben and fill in those blanks. And they're giving us just enough to get the idea without giving us too much, right? And I thought the wife here as well, performances, very strong, very good, very understated, but in a good way. The apple cut, it was so uncomfortably loud. I liked the tension point. Yes, I thought that was really effective. Her eyes changing from dead to alive. This was an incredibly subtle detail, and I love so much that you put the effort into doing that. I agree. I totally agree.